Today, I'm joined by an absolute legend of the internet marketing world, a guy that has been there, done it, and got the t-shirt. Has I've started to read your book, and it's absolutely incredible. So today, I have Rand Fishkin. How are you doing today, Rand?
Good, Ryan. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So why don't you just give the listeners a quick sort of synopsis of who you are and how you came to be doing what you're doing?
Sure, yeah. A lot of folks will probably know me from my previous company, a company I founded called Moz, which was in the search engine optimization space. Um, I started that company in 2003, initially as a blog, then it became a consulting company, and then, of course, a software company. Grew to a few hundred employees, raised tons of venture capital. I think it's somewhere in the $50 million range a year nowadays. And that business, was exciting to run, really, really interesting. And like a lot of venture-backed businesses, toward the end of my tenure there, just had a lot of conflict and challenges. So I left in 2018, and the next day started this new company called Sparktoro. Sparktoro is in the audience research space. And Ryan, I know you've used it, but for folks who haven't, the basic idea is you can search for any audience, your competitor's audience, any audience you can describe, and find out what they read, watch, listen to, visit, subscribe to, follow, engage with, talk about, all sorts of aggregated, anonymized social data from the web and social media networks all in one place. And it's been exciting. We launched the product 10 months ago, almost exactly, and so far have about 40,000 or so people using it, and about 600 subscribers, and it's going well. It's been an exciting and interesting journey, and it's a tiny little business, Ryan. It's just me and my co-founder Casey.
Amazing. And that's so the whole Spark Toro sort of platform and what it is one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on. But the other reason is, in effect, that is a recurring revenue business. So it's perfect for the listeners of this podcast because you've built one really successful recurring revenue business and now you're on to the next one.
Yeah.
Before we sort of get into why a membership site owner should use Spark Toro, maybe I should ask what your sort of number one lesson is that you've learned over the years from building the companies.
Um, it's tough to name just one. I mean, I know you started reading Lost and Founder, which was the book that I published in 2018, which was kind of about like all the dumb mistakes that I made trying to build Moz. And my if I had to boil it down to one lesson, it would be set yourself up for success by structuring your business, especially the way you finance and own that business,
Hmm.
because that will radically change what success means. So, for example, you and a lot of people are sort of like, oh, Rand is a successful entrepreneur.
Hmm.
That's technically not accurate, right?
Hmm.
So like I when I think of a successful entrepreneur, I think of someone who, maybe they've exited their company, they sold their company, or their company reached a place of sort of success by their own metrics, or by the metrics that they promised to their whatever investors, employees, customers. I haven't had a business do that. Moz, may be a very large business with tens of thousands of subscribers and, lots and lots of revenue, but because it raised venture capital, it needs to exit in order to be successful.
Hmm.
And the size that it needs to exit at is considerably larger than where it is today. So it's got to find some way to grow even massively more than what it is. With Sparktoro, my approach was fundamentally different. I tried to set the business up to be successful at any level,
Hmm.
right? And I think when you're building whatever, a coaching business or a membership site or a community of any kind, if you can set it up to be successful, especially in the early stages, with only a few dozen or a few hundred subscribers, with only a small amount of revenue, because hey, you're still whatever, running your day job, or you've got padding from a life partner
Mm,
or family or whatever it is. And so you can afford to have a small success and consider that successful. Oh, that's amazing. That is awesome. And I think one of the problems that we have, especially in tech, is that there's a belief that unless you become a billion-dollar unicorn,
mm,
you're a failure. And there's an entire community of folks, and especially in the US, but in the UK tech world as well,
mm.
that will demean and demoralize founders who build what they call lifestyle businesses. And they use that word as an insult.
Yep.
They use it to try and make you feel like you're not playing with the big kids.
Mm,
Um, I hate that. I think that stops a lot of entrepreneurs from even trying because they feel like they can't be this big thing. And you don't need to be. It is a beautiful thing to have 24 customers paying you $100 a month to be part of something special that they love and you love.
mm,
That's an awesome business. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
and that is a great piece of advice, especially for, well, not just for this podcast, for any person. You know, I was talking to one of my clients recently, and they said, I want to have this big membership, and I want like 50,000, 60,000 in recurring revenue a month. I said, why? Because I do. Well, are you basing your goals on a solely monetary basis? Because let me tell you what will happen when you get to that level. Anyways, to keep that level and to grow from that level takes a level of effort that I don't think you're prepared for, and also you're going to need a team. You're going to have more headaches. You need a bigger team than the one you've got. Now, I have a very successful membership. There's like 8 people that run that, and when I say 8, 5 of them are part-time,
Hmm. Yeah.
and they get
Well,
paid.
and I mean, one of the big challenges here is, I think effort is a real thing, but so too is structure and sort of, I think there's like a mental and emotional maturity component that comes with building a team, that comes with managing a business. And there's a recognition that there has to be a recognition that it feels like if you are smart enough and put in enough effort and your efforts are high quality, you should be successful. But the world, unfortunately, for better or worse, does not work that way.
Mm,
A massive component of whether a business is very successful or not is luck. It
mm,
is luck and timing. And um, so I think when a lot of folks look at across a field and they see other people being successful and they think, I could do that better, they probably could. And they probably will build a business 1/10 or 1/100th that size because luck and timing are not with them. And that is just a reality of the world, right? So I think you have to set yourself up for success by recognizing that it is not purely whatever the common nomenclature is, inspiration and perspiration. It is a tremendous amount of random chance.
mm.
And so, you roll those dice, you see what kind of business you can build. Sparktoro today is, just about $50,000 in recurring subscription revenue. I think there's a reasonable chance it could be 2 to 10x that. I
Mhm.
think there's a small chance it could be 50x that. But I don't know. And so I'm really glad that I didn't promise a bunch of investors or team or myself and my co-founder
Mm,
that we could achieve that level, that $100 million plus level of recurring revenue a year. And that's the only way for us to be successful, right? That's the only way for us to have an exit. And in Moz's case, my previous company's case, it kind of is. If Moz sells tomorrow for $75 million, which is, let's be real, that's a crap ton of money.
oh, yes.
I mean, that is a ludicrous amount of money, and it
Mhm,
will, set up myself and my wife with generational wealth, and should be plenty for a ton of team members and employees or whatever. But it it will be considered a failure by its investors because of how it's structured, right? Because of how the deal mechanics work, because of how the that financial world functions. And that's a weird thing for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. And also, it's that world that so many entrepreneurs, especially those building recurring revenue subscription businesses, especially software as a service, SaaS,
Mm,
which is my world, they compare themselves to whatever it is, the Dropbox and the HubSpot and
mm,
Google and Facebook, and that that is a tall order, my friend.
and I think, but then just from listening to you there, and I think that's the key takeaway there is to set that business up for the success that you want. And if that is a smaller number, it really, really doesn't matter. And I like that, and I agree with you there. And I think that that leads us in nicely as well, because now you've got Sparktoro and there's you and your co-founder. And I know that the people listening are going to be going, okay, how can I use Sparktoro for my membership? And
Sure.
I know exactly what they can do with it, because I heard you on another podcast. I went straight to Sparktoro. I signed up. I built out some Facebook ads within the hour. Like within the hour. This wasn't difficult. It was really easy to use. And I made 3 sales.
That's
So
I'm going to need that as an audiogram that I can just play from the website
you
from
can
now on, right?
you can have it, because it was so it was and I'm gonna let you go into it, but it was so easy to find the information. So yeah, if you're a membership site owner, why should I use Sparktoro?
Yeah, I mean the core of SparkToro is essentially a giant database of profiles, right? So you might say, "Oh, well, I'm a financial coach and I help people understand how to invest their money and manage their money and so they can join this community." Or I'm a fitness coach and so, I'm trying to build a community of people who are interested in vinyasa yoga and doing that at home or whatever it is, right? So you might go to Sparktoro and say, "Oh, it's pretty simplistic, right? There's a little drop down. It says my audience, and then you have a bunch of different ways of searching. Frequently talks about, so maybe they talk about yoga, or my audience uses these words in their profile. Maybe you are, I don't know, building a community for chemical engineers or for people who play Fortnite or whatever it is. So my audience uses these words in their profile, gamer or chemical engineer. My audience follows the social account. Maybe it's tough for you to describe exactly who your audience is, but you know that there's another social account, whatever, a Facebook account or a Twitter account or Instagram or something that they all follow. And you're like, well, my audience is really into this person, publication, whatever. I'll plug that in. And then from that data set, there's, you can search by website or hashtag as well. From that data, it'll pull back all the profiles that match and then aggregate them together. All the person identifiable information is tossed out, so it's anonymized. So it's not going to show you like, oh yeah, Ryan matched podcast host, right? When you search for him, we don't show those people. What we show you is, oh, we have whatever 17,212, podcast hosts in our database, and they collectively tend to use these hashtags. So then you go to Facebook ads and you're like, great, I want to advertise against those tags on Instagram, right? Those hashtags. Or you go to Twitter and do the same thing. Or you go to LinkedIn if that's where your audience is and you can run those ads. Or you could go to Google's display network and you could run those ads on Google Display against the websites that they visit. Or you could go find the podcast they listen to and get introduced to those podcast hosts by someone who you know in common and try and be a guest on those podcasts. Or you could sponsor those podcasts, or you could pitch those publications with an editorial piece. Whatever kind of marketing you are good at and like to do, Sparktoro is not specific on the recommendations. It's
Mm,
just useful on the data side. It will tell you, oh yeah, 21.6% of your audience of podcast hosts or chemical engineers or gamers or people into vinyasa yoga, they listen to this podcast. They visit this website. They follow these social accounts. And you can go down that list and, sort of check them off, check, add to my list. It goes to a sort of a saved list in Sparktoro. And then we will provide all the contact information for whatever people or publications you've added to your list. So you can go reach out direct, or send a LinkedIn invite or a Twitter DM or an Instagram message, or get their email address, whatever you want.
Mm, so if you have a membership site and you are into gaming or fitness, and you know that there's somebody out there that is crushing it, or a certain word that people are using, you can plug it in and it gives you a list of all these things that people like, their followers, and people that engage. And this is the thing, they engage with that content. They already engage with that content. You know that they are interested in it.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the things that people really struggle with create is in their membership is creating free content. Like, what on
Mm,
earth do I create? Well, Sparktoro literally tells you what your target market, your target members are engaging with,
yeah.
and then you can create content that's similar to that. And even if not, one of my things that I love to do, and I find so much gold in this, is going to people's YouTube channels. I go to all videos, and then I go most popular, and I put that video on. I mute the video straight away. I scroll through the comments, and I just
Mm,
start writing those out, because there's questions there that it hasn't been answered by the video. That is your content. Now, with Sparktoro, and I say it slightly differently to you with my English twang, um, you
I like
can
it. I like it. It's good.
you can plug in that and find the top YouTube channels. You don't even need to think
Right.
about it.
That's exactly right. So, I mean, one of the things that's kind of cool, right, is you can um, obviously figure out the sources that your audience pays attention to. And one thing that's good for, the most obvious thing is, pitching or sponsoring or advertising against them.
Hmm.
But the next clear, takeaway should be, oh, I can go figure out what content is successful for them and what they're talking about, and I can start to produce those kinds of things as well, or I can make a better version of that, or I can, riff off of that and find my own version, or I can go through the comments and find inspiration. The other thing that Sparktoro does is there's a tab called Audience Insights, and you can click that, and it'll show you basically text-based insights. So, here's words and phrases you find in the shares and content of people who talk about vinyasa yoga, right? And for example, somewhat surprising to me, I go down this list and I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. Yoga teacher, practice yoga, yoga meditation, sure. Weight loss. Oh, okay. I
Mm.
guess weight loss is something maybe that's important to people who are doing vinyasa. Breast cancer. Oh, fascinating. I would never have associated that, but I guess now that I see it here, it makes total sense that there would be some connection between, like, people who have had cancer or recovering or are preparing for, whatever types of medical procedures. And so they want to, improve their fitness level and those kinds of things. That's really cool. That's a powerful takeaway that potentially I would not have considered otherwise. Costa Rica. Oh, okay. Maybe Costa Rica is like a big yoga destination, or it's someplace. I don't know, but I'm going to research it for sure, because I mean, 2.2% of all people who talked about vinyasa yoga in the last 90 days also mentioned Costa Rica, and that's like 12,000 people.
Mm.
So, you go down this list and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of interesting content takeaways that you can apply. And I want to be clear, like, yes, we made this product. I have been shocked, Ryan, like the way people are using it, and the number of people who are using it in unique applications has been very surprising. I think that's something you find with a lot of software, especially when you provide data that is not prescriptive, that's sort of
Mm.
more, here's this information, do with it what you will. Like, you just learn a lot about um, audiences that you never would have considered before. We've had a surprising number of folks in healthcare fields and, like, whatchamacallit, boards of trade and economic development from, from a few different nations who are like, oh yeah, Sparktoro, I need that. Give me an annual subscription. Like, this is really important to us. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't even really know what a board of economic development does for a country, but
Yeah, but
great.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what so picking up on that then, what are some of the surprising use cases that you've seen then, and some of the ways that people are using some of this data to get results?
Yeah. So two that surprised us probably in the first 6 months or so. One was PR world. So like folks in public relations using it essentially to solve this problem of, um, I, if you've worked in corporate environments, I'm sure this will be familiar. You like go in and pitch your boss or your team or your client if you're a consultant, and you say like, "Hey, I want to, I think we should go invest some money in sponsoring whatever it is, yoga journal." And your boss comes back and is like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, yoga journal? No, 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 no. That's a niche publication. I want you to get us in the Guardian."
Mm.
Like the Guardian. Are you really?
Yeah,
I
it's
think, do you know how
massive.
much
Yeah.
work right? That's like really, really tough, to get in there. Everybody's trying to get in there. That's very hard. And it was very difficult to bring data to those conversations, right? A lot of times what you'd hear
Mm.
back is things like, look, I go golfing with our customers every Sunday and they all read the Guardian or the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or
Mm.
whatever it is. And it's like, man, CEOs, you don't have, at a certain size, you don't have real exposure
Mm.
to what customers are doing. So you can bring data to this conversation and say, oh, okay, well, I have great news. 17% of our audience online engage with the Guardian. That's a pretty good number, but 46.9% engage with Yoga Journal. What do you think? Do you want to reach, 17% of our audience, or you want to reach almost half of them?
Mm.
Just saying, right?
In a
And are you willing to
publication,
spend 10 times more to reach a smaller
yeah,
percent?
that would probably, well, maybe be easier to get into as well.
So much easier, right?
Mm.
So there's so many niche publications where you can say, oh, great, these whatever 40 publications reach between, I don't know, 5 and 10% of our audience, 2 and 5% of our audience. But together,
Mm.
we can really reach a whole bunch of people with a lot less cost and a lot less effort and a much higher success rate. Or we could spend all our effort trying to build up a relationship with somebody at the New York Times and like see if we could somehow get a pitch that'll be accepted there. But the chances are so infinitesimally small. And even if they do, even if we get in the New York Times, what are the odds that people are going to pick up and read that story? Our potential customers are going to read that story.
Mm.
It's a prestige play. And a lot of PR is, right? A lot of PR is the CEO wants their golf buddies or their friends or their family or whatever to be like, oh yeah, you were in the New York Times. Oh yeah, you were in the Wall Street Journal. Or they want their potential investors to see them there or whatever it is. Okay, that's fine, but let's just be real about the reason for that. It is not marketing, it's not customer development, it's not audience building, it's prestige.
Mm. And we're in the audience build game.
Yeah, I mean, if you're running a membership site, you hopefully care very little about prestige
Mm.
and a whole lot about audience development, real customer research, being in the places where your customers pay attention. That is where you should be spending your effort. And so Sparktoro is great for that. But yes, it really surprised us when PR folks were taking that percent data, right? Because that's just so valuable to them to be able to
Mm.
say, oh, I don't have to, try and convince someone with whatever, without data. I can go walk in and say, here's the numbers, right? Very, very easy presentation. The other one was advertising. We did not think of Sparktoro as an ad tool, but Ryan, I mean, your use case is perfect for this, right? You went in, you were like, oh, look, here's some hashtags, here's some text, here's what they're following.
Yep.
Facebook ads, do boom, boom, sales to me, right?
Yeah.
Like just
Within,
super
yeah.
obvious, but we did not, because I didn't come from an ads world, right? SEO, my previous company was
Yeah, yeah.
very organic. And so I did not think of it as an ad tool, but a lot of folks have picked up on that.
Well, I think the reason that we use ads and we target based on interest initially. So when you're starting out and you don't have you're not able to build a lookalike audience and various different bits and bobs, you are looking to get your interests. Now, when you go to Facebook, Facebook Ads Manager is not really, I mean, it's easier to use, but it's not set up to be your friend straight away. They
Oh
are,
no.
yeah, when you get to that interest targeting, it's going to go this one, and then you press recommendations. It's showing you what everybody else is also targeting. So that costs you more money. Now,
Yeah.
if
And it
you
drags
think,
down your ad
oh,
efficacy too, right? Because you're essentially
yep,
showing that ad or that ad group to a large number of people who are non-relevant. And so
yep,
then Facebook lowers your ad score, which means you pay
yep,
more to reach every person you want to reach. Whereas if you have very narrow, precise targeting, your
mhm,
ad score essentially gets higher. And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding, especially among a lot of folks who are new or haven't or non-sophisticated around how Facebook ads have been operating, or Google ads for that matter,
mm,
that the person who pays the most gets shown the most or gets the most clicks. And it's the inverse. The people who are paying the least
yep.
are often the ones who are getting the most clicks and the highest return on investment, and the folks who are paying the most are the suckers.
We're back. It's
And
back to
Facebook,
New York Times and yoga again, the yoga journal, isn't it? Because
yeah,
and that's what it did for me. It enabled me to get really granular on some interest and targeting that I didn't even realize. So I went in and I built them out. But then the other use case for me was I know that I have done well and got quite a few members from being a guest on other people's podcasts. So plug it in, boom, 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 boom. Here's a list of podcasts that 23% of this audience also follow. And then 22% they also do. And then 18%. Well, if I focus for the next week on getting an introduction to those three people, or I just go after those three people,
yeah,
then that's a big amount of my potential target audience. That's not wasting my time. Try because a lot of membership site owners do this. They go, oh, maybe if I just keep posting in someone else's group, or if I write a better blog post, or if I just do a few Facebook ads. But with this tool, you can see where your audience are engaging. And then from there, you can focus on that low hanging fruit that is a big, big, juicy apple. And then you add those up and you've got quite a big audience who now
yeah.
know
My
about you.
sense is it's really different today than it was 10 or 15 years ago trying to build an audience online.
Mm,
In the early years of social media and in the early years of search engines and Google, there was a lot less competition, especially in very niche spheres. And so producing content or building that community or engaging with folks, it was just an easier ramp, and a lower barrier to entry. And today that's not the case. And that is why, in my opinion, the sort of the practice of digital PR, as it's come to be called, right, of finding the sources of influence that already reach your audience, that already attract them, and then being in those places is so relatively valuable. It's such a great tactic because it is still lower barrier to entry than trying to whatever rank number one in Google, or I mean, if you've tried to build a Facebook group and then get traffic from that, it's like pulling teeth, right? Facebook intentionally, if you post something to your public page on Facebook and it's a very engaging post, but it has a link that takes people off of Facebook, Facebook will intentionally lower its reach, right? They'll be
mhm,
like, oh, that has a URL in it. We don't want people leaving Facebook.
mhm.
Show it to fewer people, right? Don't let it get the kind of engagement that it would otherwise get. But there were some tests last year people did around Instagram on this, because Instagram still has relatively high engagement rates per post. But if you put link in bio or check my bio for the link, or Instagram sees that behavior, they will lower the visibility of those posts as well. LinkedIn does the same thing. Twitter does the same thing. Reddit does the same thing, because they all need you to stay on their websites, right? They
Mm.
need you to stay on their platforms. That's how they make money. The only way they want to let you click off to somebody else is if you do it via an ad. And that, you know, look, that's how capitalism works, right? But at the same time, this is a very difficult way to build an audience. And so if you can find publications, people, communities, groups, podcasts, YouTube channels, social accounts that already attract and engage your audience, and you can get them to talk you up or talk about you, or you can be featured there, that's really powerful.
Oh, so powerful because if you're a membership site owner, you're doing $1,000, $2,000 a month in recurring revenue, and you're going, "Ah, do you know what? I'm not very good at this marketing thing. Load into Sparktoro, put some keywords in. There's a few things that I think you should be looking for now. So when it comes to the text, use you see the language that people are using. Language is so key. So you can remember that. Start to add that to a sheet, start to work through that, use that in your content when you talk, etc., etc. That will instantly help you connect with your audience better. But then you can see all of these places where your audience are hanging out. So you can then go and hang out and go in front of those. Then when you produce content and you put that onto those platforms, you've now got more people. The algorithm is now going to be your friend
Yeah.
and you're going to make more sales. And you've spent how many, I mean, how many hours do you think it would take people to do proper market research before Sparktoro and now
Yeah.
Sparktoro?
So the way Sparktoro came about, like the reason it exists in the form that it does, is because we had talked to some really smart in-house marketing teams, early in the product's development. In fact, before I even like left Moz, I talked to some folks about this, and they were doing this at scale. So they'd go take their email list of subscribers, right? So like, oh, okay, we have 100,000 email subscribers to our blog or our email newsletter or whatever for our specialty food store. So let's take that list of 100,000 emails, send it to Full Contact or Clearbit or one of these services that turns email addresses into social profiles.
Mhm.
So like, oh, okay, whatever, here's ryan.carruthers at msn.com. I don't know what your actual email is, or I'm not going to reveal it on the podcast, but like we'll take that, we plug it into Full Contact, and Full Contact comes back and says, okay, here's twitter.com slash,
Mhm.
Ryan C or whatever it is. And here he is on Instagram, and here he is on LinkedIn, and here he is on Facebook. Great. Now we're going to take those, give that list to a couple engineers, have them build a crawler, a bot to go crawl all those profiles and extract all the data about like what they've shared, what they follow, what they link to, what they comment on, and then aggregate all that data in a giant Excel spreadsheet. This was like, we were talking to some brands who had spent a year building that just so they could analyze one list. And Casey and I were like, oh my God, they spent like $500,000 to get one Sparktoro report. Build
Yeah.
that for the whole internet. Like, screw this. that is that is madness. That is madness that they had, two engineers spending like 6 months building it, and then, we're sending their email list through this just to get it one time. But it's worth it for a lot of these brands.
Mm.
That data is just so invaluable for them, um, that they found a justification to build that stuff out. But that essentially inspired us to say like, whoa, that's crazy. Let's just build it for everyone. And we did not. There are a couple of like big enterprise companies, for example, Brandwatch, which is in the UK.
Mhm.
You can use. I think they have an audience insights product inside of Brandwatch that you can use to do something pretty similar to Sparktoro. But I think it starts at like 25K a year. So that's not really going to be accessible for a lot of like membership site builders. But with Sparktoro, especially when the pandemic hit, because it basically hit right before we launched,
Mm.
we just made a very generous forever free plan. And so a lot of folks just use the free plan, get plenty of data out of it. Those like 40,000 people I mentioned who use Sparktoro, that's essentially what they're doing. They're using the free version, and we're fine with that, right? Because like, it's great. If you love it, eventually you'll come back and, maybe be a customer. And if not, that's fine. Like we don't mind people just coming, having a great experience, getting a bunch of great data, and then going and doing their work. And
Mm,
I don't know, maybe sometime in the future they'll tell somebody else about it. That that's fine. Like we have a very different philosophy around why we're building this product and company versus, maybe something that's venture backed.
and that was literally going to be my next question to you. I know that the skeptics listening to this would go, "Oh yeah, but that's going to cost me a fortune," and it actually no, it doesn't. There is a
Well, if you
forever.
do it yourself, it will.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
The DIY version is just ludicrously difficult.
and it will take you there. That is audience insights and audience research is painfully slow and
Yeah.
painful. So why would you not use a tool that you can just plug the information into, get it back, and it's free? It doesn't cost you a penny.
I mean, and obviously, some of the data is hidden if you're, in some of the lower down rows are
Mm,
hidden if you're not a paying subscriber. But that there's plenty to do, even if you're just a free user, you will probably get plenty of work to do for yourself on the marketing front just by using the free version. And um, and we are not passionate about taking money from folks who can't afford it.
mm,
So we do weird things, Ryan. Like one of the things I would never get away with in my previous businesses, we send, when you sign up for Sparktoro and you're paying like whatever, $150 a month or $50 a month, we have a few packages, but you get an email 3 days before your first billing, right? That's like, oh, hey, in 3 days, we're going to bill your card again. But if you want to cancel and you're not using the product or you don't find it valuable yet, it's super easy. Here, just click this link and you'll cancel. I know, like we say this right in the email. We're like, I know this is a weird email to send because most subscription businesses do not want you to cancel, but we'd rather you just get value and come back to us when you need us again. And that email is very popular. Lots of people like take a screenshot of it and then they share it on their social feed or whatever. And I think it builds a lot of goodwill, which is great, but also it kind of fits with our philosophical approach of why would we kind of take money from people who aren't getting value from it?
mm. And it's building a community as well, which is at the
Yeah.
very core of every single person listening to this podcast. A lot of them don't really like marketing. They love the community element of it.
Yeah. And I think community can be a wonderful marketing channel, right? If you can turn the people who benefit from what you're giving them and how you're providing that feel and that emotion and that value that you give back, and they become your evangelists, that's some of the best marketing you can possibly do. And also, it is really wise to share some of the value, at least a taste of the value that you're giving to your subscribers with a broader community of interest-based folks who might become subscribers. You know, I was looking into the indie gaming market. A few indie game producers and developers have started using Sparktoro, and I was helping them, sort of figure out how to do marketing. And that world is really marketing averse. Like there are a lot of people who pour years of their life into building these adorable, amazing, wonderful games. Video games for whatever, for phones, for Nintendo Switch, for Steam, for PCs, etc. And they're making peanuts. We're talking about people who are like living on 20 grand a year or less, or living with a partner and like trying to make their game a go. And then when it comes to marketing, they feel uncomfortable about it. They don't want to promote the thing they're doing. They're like, my game is my marketing. My product is my marketing. When
Yeah.
people see this, if they have fun with it, they're going to buy it. I'm like, you got to show it to them. They
Mm,
don't know it exists.
mm,
And even if you show it to them once, that's not enough. The way people buy things is they see it a few times, they hear about it a few times. Chances are decent that if you're hearing this podcast and it's the first time you've ever heard of Sparktoro, like maybe you'll check it out. But if you hear about it from 4 or 5 other sources over the next 3 months, year, whatever, then the chances that you go check it out are very high. And the same is true whether you're building an indie game or whether you're building a coaching community or whether you're building a membership product around financial services help. Like it doesn't matter. It is all connected to this idea of consistent, repeated impressions from sources you trust. So you have to be in those places, and if you don't, one of your competitors probably will.
Mm. And you've built the very tool that can show you very, very quickly how to do that, and it's not gonna charge them the earth. And then they and that's what I like about the pricing model that you've done there is free forever. So I'm doing 500, $600 a month on my membership. It's a little side project while I'm working. Oh, I just marketing. Then they go to the website and they go to Sparktoro and they put in their competitors and a few keywords and blah 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 blah. And all of a sudden they've now got sort of 3 YouTube channels to potentially look at, and then they've got 4 or 5 podcasts to be a guest on. All of a sudden, they've now had their best ever month. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to sign up to Sparktoro. You've given them a win before you've had a win, and I really like that.
Yeah, I think it's a great philosophy for any business owner, but especially folks who are in the early stages, right? So it works well for us. I would say it probably works well for a lot of your listeners too.
Mm,
If you can give people a taste of your membership, if you can give them a taste of the community, if you can give them a taste of the value and the connection that you bring before asking them to pay, chances are really good that you can get subscribers. I had that absolutely in my last business. So Moz started as a blog. It was a blog about SEO in the early days of Google's growth and success. It was helping people figure out, how do I rank in search engines? What kind of content should I create? How do I do keyword research? How do I get links? All that type of basic information. And it built a subscriber list of several thousand, I think maybe 10,000 or so people who were getting the emails, the blog emails every day. I was writing on that blog 5 nights a week, Sunday through Thursday. Every night I was publishing something new, and people started subscribing. It built up some traction. I started getting invites to speak at events, and then that sort of snowballed. And then a few years later, when we released our software, our product that people could subscribe to, we had more revenue from our subscription business in the first 6 months than we did from our consulting business that had been going for 5 years. And that was the point where we were like, oh my God, software as a service, this is amazing. Subscription revenue, who knew? And of course, it was the early days of self-service recurring revenue online, but it was a total shock to us. And that's essentially what made us decide to go invest there. But it was the value of building up that community of people who know you, like you, trust you, connect with you, are part of your community before you've ever charged them or asked them for anything other than an email address.
mm.
And then when you launch something that is valuable to them, they come back, they subscribe, right? They give you a try. No surprise.
And I think that is an incredible place to end this podcast. I've absolutely loved chatting to you. If people want to check out the website, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, if you go to sparktoro.com, right there on the homepage, you can start searching, sign up for free. There's a little 2-minute video you can watch of me explaining the product if you want to give that a spin. And if you have any questions, I am actually very available via email. My email is rand@sparktoro.com, and I love helping people find their audiences and their product. It's kind of what I do all day.
Rand, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure, Ryan. Thanks for having me.